Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting here in just a moment. Yep, Sean, I think you. Okay, perfect, excellent. Yeah, just before we get started, hi, I'm Matthew Hawker. I'm one of the admins at Break My Game. Appreciate everyone coming in. Appreciate all of you all listening in for this presentation. I'm going to hand it off in just a moment here. Just as a reminder, folks, please stay on mute for the time being while the presentation is taking place. If you have any conversations or questions that you want to have in regards to the presentation, please post those in workshop chat. I believe we'll be doing some conversational Q&A later on, but we do want to make sure we get to the presentation effectively and efficiently. And of course, if anyone has any questions whatsoever in a moderation capacity, don't hesitate to message me directly during this presentation. I'd be happy to assist as well. I'm going to go ahead and go on mute, though, and I'm going to hand it over to our presenter today to kick things off, and I'm excited to learn more.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. So hello everyone, I'm Zoe, and I'm going to be showing you ScreenTop GG today. It's this awesome free web-based tabletop platform. I like it because it's very modular and powerful, but one of the things that I like most about is how accessible it is. Playtesters don't need to pay for anything or have software installed to access your prototypes. You just need to give them a link and they could start their own games, or once you've started the game, you could just share that link with them. It's pretty easy and awesome. So to just kind of give a few rundowns of like the system, it's 2D and physicsless, which in my opinion is a pro because some people have difficulty with those kind of 3D environments. And yeah, so I'm going to start by creating like a brand new room and just show you what we've got going on here. So I whenever I talk about this, I often describe it as modular. So what exactly am I talking about when I say that? So everything in this system is based on like these 5 different like components over these 5 different pieces over here that sort of build up everything. And it's understanding how these different things interconnect is kind of what gives this system its power. So let's start from the beginning. We'll start with these assets. Assets are pretty much all the artwork that you're going to be using for your game. So I'm going to start by just uploading like a sheet of cards. So just like other tabletop platforms, this system like uses like these sort of tiled sheets of cards. And so you could just upload them. You could just, you could take the files from your other projects and upload them here, specify the rows and columns, and supports up to 16 of each, I believe. And the file size, the dimensions limitation is like 4096 pixels by 4096. So it's pretty useful. I'm also going to load a sort of table asset to get us started. So you could just specify a row and column of 1 if you want to just load a single image. And so once you have your assets in, this is like how you assign like visuals to things. So if I go back to this top level area, and I go to surfaces, that's kind of like this table space. Right now it's just like this blank like square. But if I go into here, there's like a bunch of different settings, the color for the table, and I could just select the asset that I specified. And now we got ourselves like a little working space here. So I'll get back to surfaces later, but the way I think about this is sort of like your physical working space. So yeah, so let's so before I continue, do we have any like questions before I continue? Just like, okay, I'm going to go into components now. So components are kind of like the some of the like core like building blocks that you're going to be working with the most. So if we go into this, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces here. And so like everything is kind of broken down into these 4 core different types of pieces. There are your tiles, your containers, your dice, and your counters. like you can see that most of these are tiles. There's the obvious die and there's this container. And so tiles are kind of your standard two-sided pieces that's used for anything from cards to meeples, like tokens, anything. Containers are things like your boards, your deck holders, but they're also very useful for specifying your hand zones, which I'll get into later. And then your dice encounters is somewhat self-explanatory, but you could also create like custom like images, and you could create some like impossible dice in this, which is pretty cool. Let's just start with a standard playing card, just so we can kind of take a look at what's under the hood here. Excuse me. So once we're in this view, our view screen kind of gets split into this like physical space over here, and then this sort of like component level screen. So over here we've got our component, and we could see all these different settings for the component. So if we were to, this is a sort of like general specs for like all the pieces of that type, so to speak. So like if I were to change this shape to a circle, then all the 52 cards would now be these like circle things. So so I mentioned that there's like 52 of these cards. So the way that's like portrayed is with this concept of variance. So a variant is just like one of the ways that that component is like visually represented. So if we go into here, we could see that there's one for each card type. And if I was to go into like say the Ace of Clubs, we could see how it's like broken down. There's like an asset for the front, there's an asset for the back. It's referencing this asset sheet, and we're specifying the specific one from that asset sheet that we're using. What's cool about this, if you notice, is that these are like transparent. So you could like change the fill to be like a different color, and it'll change the card. You could even make this transparent if you wanted to be fancy, or you had transparent cards. So yeah, that's pretty neat. And so that's like, so now that we've had this context, why don't we go about importing that custom sheet of cards that I made. So we'll go to create a blank tile, and so I'm going to just set up some stuff here, and I'm going to give it a little bit more of a card shape. And so now I'm going to go into the variance and select that sheet I have and set the back, and I could just use the same back from the same sheet, and I'm going to use this breaker one. Alright, so that's great. I've got one card, and if I want to make all of them, like, it would be tedious for me to just add these variants and do them over and over, but luckily there is a clone feature. So I have 30 cards total there, so let's do that. But we have 30 copies of like the 0 card, and that's less ideal. But luckily there's a thing called bulk edit, which I think is amazing, and this is where everybody gets intimidated, but don't worry. Like, it looks like code, but like for the most part, you only really need this one command, which is in the basic tutorial. And all it's doing is it's assigning this asset index value to be the index in this bulk edit operation. And you could see it like in real time over here that the asset index has been updated. So if we save that, then now we see that all these cards have been updated. So if you're handy with JavaScript, that's like a very powerful tool that you can use. But otherwise, you could easily get by knowing just that one line. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Matt just typed it in chat. So that's great. We've got this this set of cards defined, and let's give it a name. I think I forgot to save. So, but they're not. I don't see them anywhere on the table. So what we've done at this point is we've just created like a definition of like these cards, and if we want them to exist in our table space, we have to sort of generated. So you could sit down at this table. There's some default seats that are set up. And if you look in this upper right corner, there's this like chest. And if you click on that, then you can see all the components that we've defined. We've got the playing cards that we pulled in earlier, and then our custom cards. So if I was like to pull this in, yeah, see, I only modified that one variant, but I could easily do a bulk edit. Then I could go down here, I could create all, and then I got my deck of cards on the table, and I could start immediately playing with it. And cool thing about these, since they're all the same component, they could all be like shuffled together. If you were to press Control A, you would select all of them. If you press Z, you would like shuffle them around. And yeah, you could like shuffle things in place, so you could like deal out cards to somebody and then like shuffle everything. It's pretty cool. Anyway, oh yeah, look at this fancy transparent card. All right, let me check my notes. I'm sorry, I get off track. So great. So if we were to, so let's pull in our other cards here. So these are not of the same component type, so like I wouldn't be able to like stack these together. So that's like the importance of the component distinction. So let's say that we want to play like a game now. It'd probably be hard to play a card game without any sort of hidden information. So this is probably a good time to start getting into containers. So if I go back to my components over here, I'm going to load up a container. I think I mentioned earlier that this is something that could be used as sort of like a hand zone. So let's go define this as a hand, and let's make this nice and hefty so that we could like fit our cards into it, and give it a little bit of rounding on the corners, make it look all pretty and fancy. And let's define how it looks. We don't have to assign an asset, we could just leave it blank, and we could choose like a player color, maybe make it a little transparent, make it fancy. And then so let's drop this on the table, huh? So let's get our hand zone, create it, and great. So now we got this container, but we haven't set up any drop points on it, so it doesn't really hold anything. So for it to hold our cards, we're going to have to go to this drop zone thing over here on the left. Excuse me. So this is where you would define like what things go on top of your container. So I'm going to stick our BMG cards on here, and now I could pick up my cards, put them on here, and they'll be sort of attached to it. But they're still visible. So here's how we could fix that. If I right click on this, I could change it so that it has a view policy of allow seats, and then I could choose to assign seats to it. Right now it has no seats assigned to it, but if I'm sitting at seat 2 right now. So if I assign this to seat 2, suddenly I can see it now. Great. Okay, so let's pretty this up a bit. So if I go back to my drop zone over here, there's this thing called anchors. And so I'm going to add an anchor. And these are sort of like snap points. What I like about these is that you could set up a snap point that's like you could set up an anchor line. And what that anchor line will do is it will splay your cards for you. So now I've got this anchor line set up on here, and now it will just sort of arrange my cards like this. I didn't design these cards super smart, so I need them to be spread out a little bit more. So let's just increase the gap here. There we go. That's better. So yeah. Now we got hand zones. And then if you wanted to get extra fancy with it, you could change the hidden style of the hand object so that you can still see like the player color. but the cards would still be hidden. So I just changed the hidden style from opaque to none. And now if I were to change this to not include my seat, the cards would still be hidden, but the hand zone would still be visible. And if you really want, if you were attached to the way that this is done, you could change the hidden style of these cards so that it's the back that's shown. And so now when you move a card onto it, it shows the back of the card. When you pull it off, it shows the front. So pretty cool stuff. Let's see. Let me check my notes. Do we have any questions before I start getting into some of the other fun stuff that you could do?
Hey, I think we have one question in the chat by Mike.
Yes.
Can you manipulate the anchor lines by clicking and dragging, or do you always have to use coordinates?
Oh, yes. So I do believe that my understanding is that you have to use coordinates right now. So it is one of those things where this is not the helpful answer. I was going to say that you could use bulk editing to create multiple snap points, but that still requires like coordinates and perhaps more math. But yeah, so that is one of the things about this, is that you do have to specify coordinates for these things. Yes. Are there other questions? And I see that I had said that it is a possibility to add this in the future. This is still in development, so and getting features all the time. Okay, so I wanted to quickly demonstrate a few other cool things about this. I sort of just briefly mentioned these dice encounters, and so the cool thing about these dice, where'd they go? All right, and so you can specify your number of sides here, and you can specify the shape, but excuse me. Funny thing about this platform is that it doesn't necessarily abide by laws of physical reality. So this is a 9-sided dice right here, and for these you don't necessarily have to assign like a custom like asset to it if you were to create it just like this. And this is another way you could create objects onto your table through this menu, but it's generally easier to use this chest over here. Then you could get your objects over here, and yeah, without configuring anything, you could choose to just leave it as blank or just change a fill color or something. But if you did decide to use assets, so if I, for example, use this and I set the index to say 4, so that it started at the number 1, then it's going to roll basically from that index plus however many sides I have. So so if I roll this, it's going to change randomly between those white, pink, and blue 1s and the white, pink, and blue 3s. So yeah, counters work very much in a similar way. You don't necessarily have to assign a asset to them, and they also have a size value associated with them. You could add them to your space, and when you bump them, it just goes up, and once you get to the max, I believe it counts, yeah, resets back to 0. And in a similar fashion, you could go to its variant, and you could assign it an asset, and it will cycle through those based on which index you provide. So if I provide it, if I start at 1, then it would start here, and I think I gave it 10 sides, so it's going to go up to like 4 white, and then reset back down to 4 0. Oh no, never mind, I got it wrong. But yeah, so yeah, and then here's another cool thing that I really like about this. So going back to the top level, for counters, is it possible to decrease? Yes. So if you if you hold shift while you bump the counter, it will go cycle backwards. That would probably be easier to see if I didn't use my funky asset. Let me remove it. Yeah, so yeah, you can bump it down or you can bump it up. Yeah. Let me see. So yes, some other cool things is that there are these, you could have multiple surfaces. So you could have like multiple tables worth of stuff. I'm sure you've probably seen some mods where like there is like a selection of boards, like if it's like faction based or something like that, you might select like a faction and then you have like all these spare factions that aren't being used. You could create like a second table and you could keep all of your factions on there, and then you could decide like just as an example, like say this was like a faction board, I could be like, okay, I'm going to pick this one. You could then move this to another surface and you could have like a surface for like different maps or different setups, and you could like move it to that surface, and then now we're cooking with gas, and all the factions that you're not playing with are conveniently on another table space. So that's cool. Yes, as Jamie just mentioned, it's like excellent for fight sequences, character selection. It seems perfect for that sort of flexible setup sort of thing. Last couple of things to go through. There are seats, and you could add a whole bunch of them. One trick that I like to have is I'd like to set most of these to have a create policy of deny, but then I like to have one that's sort of like a admin, so that when watching a playtest, I could sort of be able to see everybody's cards, and then you could just, for all these different objects that would normally be only visible to that player, you could assign it the seat of that player and also the admin seat. So that's pretty cool. Yes, containers within containers is a really excellent thing to do for like if you wanted to set up like yeah, if you wanted to like say have a tray spot specifically for where you like plug in your faction board or something like that. It's really handy. Last thing I really want to go over is that there are these guides. So you'll notice in the upper right corner there's this question mark, and if you click on it, it has these sort of default shortcuts and controls, and these are all very valuable. But you could create your own sort of guide to go over there and fill it with rules for your game or links to the rules or things like that. Like I have like a feedback form link on mine, so that's really cool. And then it'll just show up over here. Like so yeah, I think that's really awesome. So yes, that's the gist of it. Let's see, I see a question. Can containers contain various assets and users can draw a random asset from the container? So so here's so like if you want to like create like a bag or something like that, what you could do is you could create an object that has a container that has like a deny policy, a deny view policy, so that like nobody can see into it. So yeah, that's what's set up on here. It's just what's going on here? Oh, is it because this doesn't have a no, it does. Interesting. That should be hidden, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to answer that previous question first. So like you can make a container that hides everything that's on it, but if you want to make it so that like whoa, that's really trippy. If you want to make it so that you draw like a random thing out of it, like the random thing that you draw would have to be like all the same component. It would have to be like variants of the same component because so what you could do is let me just oops. So if I change all these to have a hidden style of opaque, I could kind of demonstrate what I'm thinking of. And I'm not sure why some of these things are not hide. Oh, it's because the container doesn't have a drop point for it. That's why. So I'd have to go to the hand object, go to the drop zone, and then add all the other stuff to it. That's what I'm doing wrong. My bad. Okay. So if I add literally everything to it, so now, okay, now it will hide. Okay, so I could add like a bunch of things to this, and but like you're going to kind of see the outline of like the random stuff that's in there. So the best way is if you make all the random things that you could draw from here be like of the same component type, then you could like grab one in there and you could shuffle them, and then you could just like sort of randomly pull one from there. And they don't have to be a line anchor. It could be like a point anchor, so they're all stacked like a deck. But yeah, that's kind of like the best way to do that sort of big thing. Let me see. Apologize, I'm having a little trouble keeping up with chat. But do we?
So I might be able to throw a question at you.
Yes, please.
So earlier on, I think they're discussing it now. Heather asked the question: would it be possible for someone to make a blank table that just has all the seats set up, then share it out somewhere people could download and start from that point?
Oh yes, yeah, that's absolutely possible. So something that I do a lot is I take like one of my existing games and I will make a clone of it. So there's like this option right here to clone game, and that will copy everything that you have set up into it. So I, for example, set up one of my games to have like all the seats arranged, all the hands set up, and then like some of the like standard like thing niceties that I like to have, like a deck holder and a discard holder, things like that, and just copy that around. It is possible to like make it like a public thing and make it so anybody could clone it. So it is possible to create sort of like a sort of like in the same way that we have like that BMG like thing of like playtest, like that playtest form and pronouns. Like you could have like something similar to that. You have like here's a template table of like common resources. So yeah, that is possible. Let's see. Yes.
Another question was asked by Leon. I can easily see this being very useful for card games. How about things like pushing cubes, gathering resources, moving pieces around, markers on a track, things like that?
So you could very easily do things like markers on the track. You could easily create like a board with like let me get back into my table. You could easily create like a container that is essentially your game board with like with like with anchors for each point where you might step along the way, and you could move and drag pieces along that board. I think like one of these things, one of the default components is like a chessboard. I actually haven't used this, so let's take a look at this. I'm wondering if it like will have anchor points on it, because to be honest, I haven't checked this out. So if I take a look at this, yeah, so this already has a whole bunch of anchor points on it. So you could have like a board with like spaces that you move to, and you move pieces onto it. You can't really do I saw somebody in like the design chat earlier like asking for like some way to like have like a mechanic where you like tilt a die, like tap a die over, and unfortunately that's not, I don't see a way to do that cleanly in this. So but moving pieces around, having counters for more complex games, I could totally see that in this setup. So let's see. I'm going to. Do we have any other questions while I just sort of mess around with this?
No questions, but this is David from CodeCats. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh yeah, no problem. Okay, so right here, I added these chess pieces, adding them to the drop points of this, and now I could easily just sort of move these around and such. So I could easily imagine you having like a score tracker, or you have like a board where you're moving pieces around it, or things like that. I hope that answers that question from earlier. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I'm going to try to keep up with chat here. And I see Dai says that if there are some basic templates that we would like feature, that they could totally be featured on ScreenTop.gg. So that's pretty awesome.
Mike asks, is there a repository for bits of code that would be useful for creating assets, like a deck of cards or a grid of anchor points?
There is a tutorial. There is like some learning resources, and I did see that one of the ones on here is for creating like a anchor point grid. I don't know if there is a like a bigger repo available, but I totally think we could make one. Just the other day, I made a script for arranging pieces along points in a circle. Maybe we could put that on here too. But yeah, so there are some existing like snippets of bulk edit code to sort of give you a taste of what you could do with the bulk edit feature to sort of automatically arrange anchor points, or excuse me, or if you want to like yeah, for automatically arranging anchor points, for line pieces, for setting stuff up with variance and things like that. So but yeah, yes, I hope that answers that question. So I guess one other cool trick I would like to show is, oops, well, here's the page. On one of my games, I have something that people will ask for a lot is like a ability to search the deck. And while searching the deck is not like a base feature, what you could do is you could set up a wait a minute, did I set up, oh, I set up a game instead of edit. You could set up a container that has like an anchor line that's like way bigger than the container itself. And then you could stick like a deck on that and it will spread it out and you can search through it that way. So there's lots of like cool little tricks that you could do to with this system. Let's see. Yep, that's what I have. Does anybody have anything they want to see if we could try doing on the platform in like a short amount of time? For the person that was asking earlier about like a game that was like less card based and more about moving pieces around the map and things like that, does this sort of satisfy you, or were there other interactions that you were kind of hoping to capture? Oh yes, I should show that trick too. So okay, so one other cool way to search through cards. Oh yeah, and just some I haven't really gone over just like general usage of this. So like, gonna move this to over here. So one thing that I'm constantly doing is like selecting multiple cards from a deck, like if I'm drawing 5 or something. And something I commonly do for that is once you click on it, if you're holding shift, you will select like a bunch of cards off the top. So I like clicked on this and I shift clicked it a few times until I had this up to 6, and now I drew like 6 cards off the top of the deck. If you're holding control, you'll grab like you'll grab like that whole stack. And if you press like the bracket keys, then you'll do this cool thing where you could like cycle through the cards. Z for shuffling, and yeah. Let's see what. So if you wanted to create like a pile of pieces like wood or brick or something, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could create like a stack of tiles so it would look kind of like this, like a deck of cards with like a number on the bottom. Or I have a game that uses like stamps, and the way I have those stamps shown is I create like an anchor line so that you could just have like all those things sort of splayed out as like a resource like that. So if you were to have like wheat and wood and stuff like that, they would be like these little tiles, and you could just like have like a personal player board where you would keep those and just have them splayed out like that. Or you could just have them have like a single point anchor and just have them displayed like this.
One question that was asked earlier, I think we may have missed it. Tailwind says, I was hoping to add a counter that starts at 1, and then asks, is there an easy way to implement that, or is just going through an asset sheet the best way?
A counter that starts at 1. I think I haven't worked with counters that much, so maybe David would know. But I think creating an asset sheet might be the way to do that. Let's see. I think I created one in here. Oh wait, no, I think I did not. So if I create like a counter, I think it's always going to start at 0. Well, what you could do is you could create your counter, add it to the table, started at 1, and just save it like that. Would that meet your needs? Like you could have it like set up already at 1 on in the table when you load up the game, it's not at 0. Let's see, would a wood piece have to be square? Oh, no, it does not. So there's lots of options for the different kinds of tiles that you make. So you could create a tile and you could give it like a circle shape. You could give it a polygonal shape with like different number of sides. And there's even the option for a path. I have not messed with it, but I believe Mika has been having lots of luck making like a cool like hexagonal like object with this. But oh hey, that's cool, it's a little heart. So yes, given the right math chops, you could create any sort of like SVG type object shape. And there's some base support for rectangles, rounded rectangles, circles, and polygons. I hope that helps. Oh, and you can have transparent pieces. So you could have like a wood token where like the outside layer is transparent. So if you don't want to go through the trouble of creating like a complex like pathing thing for your wood, you could just upload a thing with like a transparent border. So yeah. And I believe you could even set the stroke color to transparent. Let's see, I wonder if I have an example token somewhere. I don't make tokens enough. So let's see. I'm going to work on that, but please, if you have any questions, interrupt me while I'm just experimenting on this.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pop in again. I think there was a question and an answer. If I can share both real quick.
Oh yes, please.
So Courtney asks, is there a way to generate an infinite supply of a resource? Later on, we have an answer, which is if you go to the seat and set create policy to allow, players in that seat will be able to access the chest during play and can create whatever objects they want.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's this create policy over here. So anybody with that policy will be able to access this chest and will be able to spawn stuff. I don't know if you can make it so that it's like a specific resource that you have access to spawning. So you might not be able to create like a bag of infinite one thing, but not grant access to creating everything else too. But it is easy to create multiple clones of something. Like I could take this object and find chess piece 12, and I could just create like 100 clones of this. There are now 100 pawns right here. It's pretty cool. Let's see. I was doing a thing. But yes, please interrupt me. Right, because right now I'm just sort of messing with stuff. I want to see. I haven't tried the something with like a transparent background and how that plays. Oh, I think I might have something I could use in here. Yeah. Okay, so
I actually have a quick question.
yes, please.
So for games like hidden role games, where maybe the entire screen needs to be invisible for all players for a short period of time, while certain players conduct an interaction of some sort, is there a way to create that in Screen Top?
I think, unfortunately, that would be a scenario where you'd have to trust the players to be covering their eyes. I don't know if there's a way to do that. You could like ask players to go to like surface 1, but I don't know if you would actually be able to see which surface players are on. But yeah, you can press numbers to change which surface you're on. But yeah, as for like a blindfold type thing, not that I'm aware of. Yeah, sorry.
No, thank you so much.
Sure. So let's see, if I take this butterfly and let's see, let's make the tile a little bit more shapely for, oops. And then, wait, oh no, this is not transparent, is it? I thought that was transparent. I duped myself. Oh, I have a transparent butterfly somewhere. Maybe I don't. Thought I did.
One thing while you're doing that I found really useful information for like tile games. If you want to have a bunch of tiles and randomize them, you can, if you have them all in the same container, you can select all. Just like click on one, select all, and shuffle them, and they'll actually stay in the plate. Like they'll, they won't just change the shape. Like if you have a specific shape or something, they will all keep in that same kind of order. I don't know if I'm explaining that really well, but I could see a lot of games in which that's pretty useful.
Yeah. I think that's yeah, the control A is I'll admit a little scary, because one thing that I become used to is like when I select multiple things and I click and drag them, that they'll like stay distinct. But if you select multiple things, it'll like combine them. So that's one thing you gotta look out for. But in terms of having like if you were to have like a container and you want to like shuffle the things in that container, it is kind of cool that you could like set up your pieces, and if you press Control A, it'll only select all the pieces that are in that container. And then from there, if you want to have like a sort of bake effect, so if I change it to like this, then I could select the chess pieces and I could shuffle them around and to kind of give that sort of bake effect. Yeah. One other thing you could do with these is you could set the interact policy so that only a specific player is able to interact with it. So you can make it so that only a certain player is able to like actually touch these pieces. That is a thing. I haven't seen a use case for that, but I'm sure there are groups where that's necessary. Let's see. Oh, I did finally find an asset with transparency. So yes, that was all I had planned. Oh no, it is. Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong. It's because I have the fill color, so I need to like change this fill color to that. I'll go back to my butterfly. And then I think if I change the stroke color to be transparent as well. Okay, it still has a box around it. But if you don't want to go through the trouble of making like a perfect patched token, you could create like a transparent PNG sheet to use for the for your like wood and your wheat and stuff, and yeah. Yeah, I made the stroke color, or I think I did. Yeah, I made the stroke color transparent, but it still shows up a little bit. I think if it wasn't transparent, I think it would just, it would show up as like a box around it. But you could set that up so that it only shows up when you have it selected. Oh yeah, that border is the color of the seed. So if I was to change seeds to like red, then the border is red because that's who's grabbing the object. Yes.
And Zoe, we have a question from Mike. Two questions, in fact. Can containers ignore anchor points, and can anchor points be tied to specific containers?
Absolutely. You could absolutely create, what you can do is you could take your container and you could specify a drop point only have access to like say a specific like a specific container, or you could set up drop points so that some spaces will only take tokens and other spaces will take containers, and those containers could, so like you could like do a whole nesting thing with this where you have like pieces on a container and that container on another container, and you could even have that container on another container, and I believe, and then yes, and if like the top level container is like hidden, it'll hide all the things in all the lower containers. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And can containers ignore anchor points? So like if you create a drop point that does not have anchor points for it, then you could make it so that the container has a piece that does not require anchor points. And you can make it so that some things do require anchor points by assigning them a different drop zone. So yes. Perfect. Great.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, so I know this is primarily browser based. Are there any browsers that are most recommended to use when working with this, or any browsers that may not be as great for this, or is that not really relevant for using this application?
Hey guys, this is David. I can take this question. So I generally test on Chrome. So that means Chrome itself will work pretty well. I think the new Edge browser is also Chromium based, so that'll work. And ideally Firefox and Safari work, but if you guys run into bugs with either of those, ping me in the Discord and I'll definitely try to take a look.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, David. Okay. Other things I haven't really shown, I'm realizing there is the ability to rotate around the table. So if you had multiple seats and somebody's sitting across, you could have them rotate to sit there. You could control exactly what kind of rotation. So like in some platforms, you kind of have to have each player manually set their rotation degrees, and in this you could like set up on your table exactly what rotations are available, and you could do the same for cards. You could say specify for the card like this card can only rotate these eight different ways, or you could change it so it only rotates upside down or right side up. So lots of cool stuff like that. I actually haven't played with this. So this just changed the way it flips. Yeah, ooh, look at that. So, lots of cool stuff. I'm wondering if there's other cool things that I have just completely glossed over. Oh, something that I wish I knew earlier is that sometimes when you're doing bulk editing, you'll want to be like looking at like all the objects, and it'll be hard to like pick them out. But if you go to that specific object, and then if you go to that specific component, and then you go to the object main for that, then it will only show the objects of that specific component type, and then you can select all of them and deselect whichever ones you don't want. And another handy thing for when you're editing is like when you click on the object, you could there's like shortcuts to view like that specific variant, that specific component, that specific object. And so while you're messing with stuff and you're like, I wish this component was like bigger, then you could like view the component and change it here. Let's see. Yes, there is no mobile support at the moment. Although I might be mistaken, but it looks like if you were to connect like a mouse and keyboard to your phone, which I have done before, I think you would be able to like mess with stuff tangentially. Maybe I haven't tried it. Let's see. Although, oh yes, that's a good thing, Jamie. So, one thing that happens a lot is like sometimes like if you have people arranged around the table like this, it could be obnoxious to like be handed the card and you have to like rotate it. So something that I like to do a lot is create a sort of create like these containers for like holding your cards, and then if you go into the drop zone definition of it, or actually the anchor, there's this option for setting rotation. And what that does is when you move a object onto that anchor, it rotates it for you. So you could essentially have things auto-rotate to your position on the table. So if I'm sitting right here and a card gets handed to me, it'll be like face up. And so this is degree based, so if I change this to 90, then it's going to start throwing the cards sideways at me. But yeah, I think that's like a really handy thing to do. Let's see. Let's see, anything else people would like to showcase or try? I'm going to show off this because I was pretty proud of this. I have a game that I thought I would not be able to showcase in our platforms because it requires putting stuff in the back of the sleeve, and the way I managed to make that work is by having like the container be the cover of the card, and so you could put stuff onto the back of the sleeve like that, and then when you're looking at the card, you bring it into your hand and you look at it like that. It's a little bit of a workaround, but I was quite pleased to be able to get it to work in this. And another cool thing about doing it this way is that I could like shuffle the cards and like the tokens and stuff all stay together. I think that's really neat. Let's see. Flip anchors. So a card can automatically flip over when drawn. Yes, I don't think there's support for that, but it looks like there's a commitment to add it. Yes, a lot of development is based on popular demand. So if there is something you want, you should voice it. So David could get an idea of the priority of it. So what's going on here is that this right here is a container, and then this is a container. So and then this hand zone is a container. So these are all so like I have like a hand zone down here, and then I have like this container that's used to cover it. Normally I would want this container to be like flippable so you can see the other side, but the containers are all one-sided, so this is sort of like the workaround I've used. But yes, this is a container within a container with a container on top with tiles on top of that container. So yeah. Then I think I think I'm seated at the observer, so if I sat down at this spot, then I would see the back of the card, but I wouldn't be able to see the card itself. So I think that's pretty neat. Containers. Okay. Containers all the way down. I got hardly containers myself. So yeah. I think it's neat. Anybody else have any other questions? We're approaching time, and I apologize that it's kind of rambly in the second half, but I wanted to make sure there's plenty of time to address any specific questions, because I mostly use the platform for like card games, and I know some people do more complicated games, and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I could totally do that, but I haven't made those games myself, so questions are a great way. Oh yeah, you can totally name seats. So like yeah, what I've done in like a lot of my games is that I have like your default seats, and then I have like the admin named observer, but you could totally name it something else. But yeah, you could name your seats yellow, blue. In one of my games, you're playing as two specific characters, so the seats are named after those characters. So there's like the stalwart and the idealist in this one. So yeah.
Zoe, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Back in Persuasion, and you were showing us all the different containers and the zones. In that big square, so in the big blue square, you have a bunch of different, and on the envelope, you have a bunch of different line anchors. How do you set up those different line containers? That's one container, right? With the different line anchors?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, this is one container with multiple line anchors. So if you, so let's see, let me pull this up. So if I go over to this object, and if I go to the drop zones for this, so for this is like one wild container because it's holding like 4 different types of things. It's holding like this this thing, and the other, let's see, the one that we want to look at is the trait zones. So for this one, the child component for this are these are these trait containers. And for this, you can see I have 2 anchors defined. So I have 2 anchors on here, and one of them is this bottom line. And then if I go to the other anchor, it's this top line. So the anchor that I have for the envelope itself is a little wilder. If I go to the stamp drop zone for this, there's actually like 4 anchors, like just arranged in like a sort of rectangular shape, so that when you put stamps on it, it kind of just goes around, goes around the borders. Yeah, so I think it's really handy. And these don't have to be like, you could like have these go like real rogue. Like they don't have to be like orthogonal lines. And then something that
Thanks.
yeah, you're welcome. One last thing I want to point out is that if you go in to edit a game, those changes that you make are going to stick. But if you're like, I want to try doing something, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to completely ruin my game, you can go to this revision tab on your game, and you could go over here and you could clone your main branch. And then you'll have like a different version of your game, and you could rename that version. So like I think on Bread, I think I have like a version, I like naming my different iterations, and then that way you could create a branch off of it, you can mess around with it, and then when you're ready with that, then you could actually I haven't tried this yet, because usually what I do is I branch off the one I want to keep safe and keep working on main. And if this wasn't my main mod, I would try it, but I believe you could set it as the default, and then every time you create like until you delete that branch, when you go to play a game, you could select which version that you want to edit or which one you want to play.
Zoe, one more question was asked. I think there was already an answer here as well, but I figured I'd ask it so we can have it in this. Can you lock? Oh, excuse me. Mike asks, can you lock containers so that you can't pick them up and
Oh yeah.
move them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, that's what I've done here. So one of the options is to you could lock components to the table, and then another way of doing that is you could like change the interact policy on it to deny all, so that nobody can move it, or you could make it so it's locked to everybody but one player. I like to leave the hand zones unlocked in a lot of games because like in this one, oh, I think I'll show this too while I'm at it. Or where was it? There was a thing where you could see the games that are active, but now I can't remember where that is.
Zoe, you have to go into your profile.
Oh, my profile.
You have to click on you.
On
Go
edit
to edit
profile.
profile.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah. So if you go profile and edit profile, you can see all the different rooms that you've started. And so I need a clean house. All these like rooms that I'm not using. And yeah. What was I? Oh yeah, so like there we go. So like I like leaving hand zones unlocked because sometimes like only 2 people are playing and it seems silly to have like all this space, and then people could just like move their hand zones closer and have a little more intimate experience. Yeah, you don't have to you don't have to clean out your rooms because they do auto expire after 2 days. Unless you star them. So like if you're playing a legacy game or something, then you could like star it to keep it around. But yeah, you don't have to clean house. That's just me being obsessive. Yes, there is a section you could grant like different levels of access to your game. So if you wanted, you could invite somebody I haven't actually tried this before, so like this is my first time looking at this. But it looks like you could send them a link or send it by email, and then they will have access to edit your project as well. You could assign specific people to be a tester in case you want to control like who was able to test and you weren't ready to make it public yet. Yeah. Yeah, being able to have people collaborate on something is kind of a big deal. Like that was a big problem with past platforms that I use, where only these original Steam like account owner was able to update it. Blur out that link on. Oh, well, this is just the demo. I'm gonna delete this. So if somebody becomes a designer on this, more power to them.
Hi, could I jump in really quickly? And I see a question, which is, can I talk about the different plans and the general future for ScreenTop?
Yes.
As far as paid plans go, the eventual goal is to monetize ScreenTop somehow. So there will be a premium subscription feature that I need to get implemented. That said, you're perfectly free to use it right now for no charge, and it might be a while before I get the pricing in at all. So feel free to use the pro plan. I don't actually know the exact details. I'll share that when I have a better sense of that myself. But in the future, I do also want to allow creators themselves to be able to monetize their creations. As you saw earlier, maybe there's actually the ability to generate keys already, and I am actually looking for folks who are interested in sort of monetizing their creations digitally at some point to sell keys online. And then the incentives for screen top monetization and creator monetization are sort of aligned. So that's another thing that I'd really like to explore at some point. I hope that covered most of it.
Thank you.
Zoe, I
Awesome.
know we're past the hour here. I know also a lot of people have a thousand questions to ask you, and because and everyone as well. Just it's so cool that we're exploring this new application. I did want to make a quick note for folks in the community that want to continue discussing this application down the road and how to move their games over in general. Be sure to check out the Game Design Apps channel under the Game Design category on our Discord. You'll find a lot of focused discussion right now on this subject in particular, and bringing your game onto this platform.
Awesome.
Yeah. And with that, Zoe, was there anything else you wanted to tackle today, or talk to us about, or show us?
No, that was the whole thing. That was everything I had planned.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for taking your time today to tell us, and thank you for the developer of ScreenTop for dropping in and giving us information as well. I believe this is going to be recorded, or this is recorded, so we'll be able to put this in a video later on through Zoe, and so we'll be able to sure to get that and have that on the Discord and elsewhere as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to teach us more about ScreenTop and how to get started with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you very much for Dave for attending and helping answer questions, and for also just making a very awesome platform. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I really appreciate all of your support and everyone for tuning in. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions, I'm happy to also stick around and answer them. Or if you have any requests, join my Discord and just list them there.
And I do have that Discord link pinned in the Game Design Apps channel, so you should be able to find that. Should be, I think, the third post there. So yeah, definitely join that if you have questions for the developer or just want to give feedback in general.
And I will have the Break My Game and the ScreenTop GG Discords linked in the description if you're watching this from the future. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. You all have a great evening. Thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a great one. Looking forward to playing your game soon.